The Tampa Bay region is rich in everyday heroes who are working year-round quietly and don't typically get a lot of attention, from employees at local nonprofits to teams at research centers. Just doing their job means being a hero to someone in crisis. This afternoon, we're joined by Clara Reynolds, who's the president and CEO of the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay, which is home to TransCare Medical Transportation Services. We're joined by Sharon Boyes, who's the executive director of the foundation at the Lions World Vision Institute. And we're joined by Gates Garcia, nationally syndicated podcaster, the founder and CEO of We the People Media, and a Tampa native who shares the stories of everyday heroes across the country. Welcome, welcome. We're so happy that you're here.
Thank you.
Clara, I'd like to start with you. Explain to our viewers what TransCare Medical Services is.
So TransCare Medical Transportation Services is a division of the Crisis Center of Tampa Bay, and we provide a host of transports, of emergency medical transports, whether somebody calls 911 in a medical emergency or they are having a behavioral health emergency, that they would fall under the Baker or the Marchman Act, meaning that they're a danger to themselves or somebody else. Mm-hmm. We provide that transportation so that law enforcement or fire rescue doesn't have to do that. And we provide it 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, and that we provide roughly about 26,000 transports every year, but we answer about 62,000 calls from people right here in our Hillsborough County area who are in some form of medical or behavioral health crisis.
And these are folks who are responding in some very dark, stressful moments for a family.
Absolutely. You know, nobody calls 911 when they're having a good day, whether they're having an emergency and they need law enforcement or they need medical or fire. So our staff have to be very specially trained to be able to not only assess for medical issues, but also to be able to de-escalate situations, not just with the patient, but with oftentimes people who are with the patient. And this doesn't just happen in people's homes, right? This can happen on the streets. This can happen in a hotel. It can happen at a sporting event. And what is always so incredible for me is that the average age of our medical technicians is about 23. So these are young individuals who, for many of them, it's their very first job, and they are making, and I'm not exaggerating, sometimes life or death situations. As I was saying to Gates, sometimes people call 911 when they have a broken toe. Some people call 911 when they're having a stroke. And so our staff never know what they're literally going to walk into for every single call, and they just do an incredible job every day.
And that's the thing that, you know, Gates and Clara and Sharon, we were talking about, is that, you know, these are folks that you've described, and if you were to ask them, do you think that you're a hero? They would say, no,
absolutely
I'm just doing
not.
My job.
Exactly.
You know, Gates, do you find that that's a common theme when you're interviewing people all over the country for your podcast?
Oh, absolutely. And the beautiful thing about my show is I'm not the hero. I get to point the microphone and the camera at real heroes. I am unapologetic about my love for America, and I think it's important to talk about these things and emphasize them as we come up on 9/11. And I think the three values that define America more than any other are faith, family, and our freedom. And I recognized after watching a lot of media, not wonderful shows like yours, but some other ones out there that don't always celebrate those things. They're actually the antithesis of promoting what's against faith, family, and freedom. And I want my kids to be raised in a country where those things are celebrated on the Hollywood screen, on the TV. So I provided a platform to bring out people with very large voices who are unapologetic about those things and can communicate the ways they live those things in their life to the rest of us.
And Sharon, you all at the Lions World Vision Institute are really not a secret, because everyone in the world knows about the work being done and the lives that are transformed as a result of what happens. But maybe here in the Tampa Bay area, we don't really realize that. Can you describe to our viewers the nature of the work?
All the time that we are one of the best kept secrets in Tampa Bay. So
only in Tampa Bay.
Only in Tampa Bay, right. At Lions World Vision Institute, our core program is we are an eye bank. So we are actually the world's largest eye bank. We give the gift of sight to over 20,000 people a year through corneal transplants, both here in the United States and then 70 countries worldwide. So we're talking about organ donation, and you want to talk about real heroes. The people who their last act in this life is to give a gift to someone else that they don't even know is truly beautiful. And then I have the privilege of running our foundation, which is the charitable and community outreach arm. And we are focused here in Tampa Bay on pediatric vision health. And so we provide free eye screenings, free eye exams, and free glasses, same day, that the kids get to pick out in Title I schools in 5 counties. And most people don't know that in Hillsborough County, only about 23% of our kids read at a 3rd grade level. And a lot of that can be solved just simply by a pair of glasses. But we're talking about families who are constantly in crisis, right? In these Title I schools. So if they get a note home that says, you know, your child has an eye issue or something, they don't know what to do. It's one more overwhelming thing. And so we go out to the schools with our mobile units, and then we're actually building a vision health center for the uninsured and underinsured in Ybor. We'll be breaking ground in November.
Congratulations. Many people will be surprised to hear you talk about the aspect of the tissues that are saved and distributed. So is the staff having those difficult conversations with the hospital staff, with the funeral homes?
So they're actually having the conversations with the family. We have great relationships with the funeral homes, with the MEs, with all of those. But even though, you know, the laws vary from state to state. Like in the state of Florida, if you are an organ donor on your driver's license, we don't need the family's permission to recover the tissues, but we still do. We get permission from everyone. And the reason for that is twofold. One, we need to know a little bit everything we can about their medical history. It helps the process, speed it up a little bit. But also we provide that aftercare and those services for someone who is in grief. And so we follow them for a year. We make them part of that community. We give them the opportunity to write to their recipients and their donor families and vice versa. And I've had the pleasure of seeing a donor family meet their recipient family, and it's truly life-changing.
One of the things that we felt so strongly about doing for this show that airs before 9/11 was to really bring home the point that you don't have to be super famous or super strong or, you know, in a high-paying job to be a superhero, to be an amazing hero to someone. That in your life you can pick your moments and be that. You know, you in the work that you all have done, Gates, you as well, what is the thing that's missing that why don't we step up more? Why don't we do more?
Well, first of all, I want to applaud both of these women here because the word that you all continue to say is family. And I've made it very clear that faith, family, and freedom are what this country is all about. You help families literally see one another, help read to one another. That's communication that's vital. You see families on their worst day, and you take that worst day away from them, and you help build better lives for them. So I applaud both of you all in that work. It's storytelling. That's why I chose my route, because I think people can relate to stories. They can take a story and somehow see how that story affects their own lives or how they relate to that story. So when I bring people on my show, look, we're never going to be the show. We cover some political issues. We're never going to be the show that breaks the news. We're going to be the show that breaks the news down to how you have these conversations at the kitchen table. So I have Hall of Fame athletes. I have rock stars that go on tour, and they're not talking about singing on stage. They're talking about coming back to the tour bus and having to change a diaper, having to have that conversation with their wife that would normally be had in the living room, but it's on a tour bus. So I try to make famous people relatable. The show's called We the People because we are all the people, and we're a lot like one another, but we need those stories to connect us to each other.
Clara, how can we as a community support the work of the Crisis Center, support what you all are doing with TransCare?
Well, thank you for that question. I think it goes back to what we were all kind of saying, is that our staff certainly don't see themselves as heroes. They see themselves as doing jobs day in and day out. And so I would say it's the simple things, right? So that when you see a TransCare ambulance or you see one of our staff at a Wawa, just say thank you. I mean, these individuals, they don't get the thank you. You know, they're moving so fast and they never get a chance to really follow up. I love sharing what you said about being able to connect with the families. That's that's the piece that's missing for us, right? We never know what happens to that patient once we transport them to the hospital. So anytime anybody sees one of these first responders, just say thank you, whether you've come into contact with them or not. That makes somebody's day, and I hear that from our staff on the occasions that we do get those letters or those pats on the back. It just makes people's day, truly.
You talked about the so many of them being young.
They are very young.
But there are also, I've met some of your staff members who are former military.
Absolutely.
Who they go into the civilian life.
Absolutely.
And how many do you have in that regard?
You know, and I think that is the beautiful thing when we talk about our military, our veterans. They have always seen themselves as helpers. There's a reason why they went into service, and they want to continue to provide that service. So we have many of them that had been maybe medics during their tours, and they want to come back and do that work. They don't necessarily want to become firefighters, but they really want to be able to get back to the community. And I think it's just a testament, truly. I do want to say one thing though, that for many of those individuals, they've also experienced some of the worst things that anybody has ever experienced. And so being able to, again, just say thank you provides that level of support that in a moment they may not feel like they have. And so while we have a first responder hope line, while we have a lot of those services and supports, again, it really is just that thank you that can really just make a difference in a helper's life.
Yeah, Sharon, tell us about how we as a community can be more supportive of the work that's going on at the Institute.
Well, I think it was exactly what you were talking about. That thank you is not just the gratitude that goes with it, it is the fact that you're seen, you know, and that's really what it's all about when you were talking about the storytelling and the connection. And you know, I mean, so number one, the biggest way you can help us is become an organ donor. I mean, you know, give that gift to someone else is amazing. And, you know, having us on these shows so that we're not the best kept secret here. And then one of the things that we are all about community collaboration, because we can't do everything by ourselves. And so whether it's a social service, whether it is a for-profit, whether it is another nonprofit, we just want to be able to say, how can we help you? You know, educate your staff, have them involved in volunteer opportunities, have them come out and even tour we're in a historic building that is absolutely gorgeous. And it's, you know, it's that knowledge. I worked at the Holocaust Museum, I think you know, for a while,
yes, I did.
And worked with many survivors. And I remember one in particular that was talking about the best way to change the world is education, education, education.
Well, thank you for what you all do. You really are a Tampa Bay treasure.
Thank you.
It's such a point of pride for our community, this
Absolutely.
global institute, and it's right here in Ybor City.